The blizzard had swallowed the entire countryside. The storm had been brutal for hours. For 12 long years, Daniel Hayes had lived alone in a silent farmhouse at the edge of the woods. Just him and his service dog, Ranger, the only companion who had ever stayed. Most nights were quiet. Most storms came and went, but nothing prepared Daniel for what happened that night. Ranger, his loyal service dog, suddenly stiffened. He growled low, then sprinted toward the fence as if something was dying out there. Daniel hadn't seen that look in Ranger's eyes since the war that he grabbed his coat and followed, each step sinking deep into the snow. His flashlight shook in his hand, slicing through the darkness until it landed on a sight that made his heart drop. A woman, a U.S. Marine, half buried in the snow, slumped against his fence, as if she had crawled her final inch just to reach safety. Her lips were blue. Her breathing was shallow. Dried blood streaked her face. When Daniel knelt beside her, she clutched his wrist with the last of her strength. She tried to speak. Only one trembling whisper escaped her lips. "They left me. Please. Help." In that moment, Daniel realized the terrifying truth. Someone hadn't just abandoned her. Someone wanted her gone. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The wind howled across the empty fields as Daniel Hayes pushed another log into the wood-burning stove. The old farmhouse groaned with every gust, but Daniel barely noticed. He had lived with silence for so many years that it had become part of him, just like the scars on his hands. The memories he never spoke about, and the loneliness he pretended didn't hurt. Ranger, his German Shepherd service dog, lay stretched near the stove, eyes half closed but ears alert, always alert. Daniel glanced at him with a faint smile. "At least I've got you, boy," he murmured. In truth, Ranger wasn't just company. He was Daniel's lifeline. The only soul who understood Daniel's quiet routines, his sleepless nights, his sudden jolts awake when memories of war slammed back without warning. The farmhouse sat miles from the nearest neighbor, wrapped in endless snow. Most people would have called it isolation. Daniel called it peace. After years of service and an even harder transition home, solitude felt safer than conversation. But even in the silence, Ranger watched him closely, as if sensing emotions Daniel no longer showed. That evening, the storm picked up strength, rattling the windows. Daniel sat at the table, polishing an old compass from his army days, when Ranger suddenly lifted his head. Then Daniel saw it. His breathing sharpened, and his tail stiffened. The dog wasn't resting anymore. He was warning. Something was out there. Ranger shot to his feet so suddenly that Daniel's chair scraped across the wooden floor. The dog's hackles rose, a deep growl building in his chest as he stared toward the front door. Daniel frowned. Ranger didn't overreact. Not ever. When he sounded the alarm, it meant something was real. "What is it, boy?" Daniel whispered, but Ranger's gaze never shifted. His body leaned forward, tense, pulling toward the porch like an invisible thread was dragging him, but a violent gust slammed against the house, shaking the windows. Snow whipped across the porch, rattling the loose metal siding. Daniel grabbed his jacket, heart thumping harder than he wanted to admit. Ranger barked once, loud, sharp, demanding. Not the warning bark he used for rabbits or shadows. This was different, urgent. Daniel opened the door, and the storm punched him in the face. Ranger bounded into the snow, nose down, tail rigid. Daniel raised his flashlight, the beam cutting through the swirling white. That's when he saw it, a smear of red on the top step. Ranger followed the trail, barking at Daniel to hurry. Blood droplets dotted the snow like dark stars leading away from the house. Then Daniel noticed the footprints, uneven, dragging, desperate. Someone had come through his property. Someone injured. Someone close. And Ranger wasn't letting Daniel ignore it. Not tonight. The beam of Daniel's flashlight trembled as he followed Ranger through the thick curtain of snow. The wind screamed against his ears, stealing every bit of warmth from his skin, but Ranger pushed forward with desperate urgency. The footprints grew heavier, deeper, then suddenly stopped near the fence line. Ranger barked sharply and sprinted ahead. Daniel hurried after him and froze. A figure lay slumped against the barbed wire fence, half buried in the snow. For a second, Daniel couldn't breathe. The storm blurred everything except the shape in front of him. Ranger reached her first, circling, whining, nudging her arm with frantic persistence. Daniel dropped to his knees beside her. A young woman, uniformed. Blood streaked down her temple, her hair crusted with ice, and across her chest, barely visible beneath the frost, was a name patch. U.S. Marine. Daniel touched her shoulder gently. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, opening just enough for Daniel to see the pain swimming behind them. She tried to lift her head, but her body gave out. "They left me," she whispered, voice cracking under the cold. "Please, help." Daniel's heartbeat slammed in his chest. He scanned the fence, torn fabric, fresh blood on the wire. She hadn't collapsed here. She had crawled here, fought here. Ranger pressed against her side, trembling with urgency. The dog wasn't just alert, he was afraid for her, and Daniel understood why. The Marine wasn't just freezing. She was fading fast. If he didn't act now, she wouldn't survive the next few minutes. Daniel slid his arms beneath the Marine's shoulders, startled by how light she felt, how limp. Her body was ice cold, her uniform stiff with frozen blood. "Stay with me," he muttered, lifting her carefully. She winced, a soft cry escaping her lips. Ranger stayed glued to Daniel's side, guiding him through the storm, barking whenever Daniel stumbled on the uneven snow. Inside the farmhouse, Daniel kicked the door shut behind him. The sudden warmth hit her like a shock. Her body shivered violently, a sign her system was failing. Daniel laid her on the couch and grabbed blankets, wrapping them around her trembling frame. Her eyes opened slowly, glassy, unfocused. "Name?" Daniel asked gently. "S. Sergeant Amon," she whispered, even speaking hurt. "I wasn't supposed to be alone. My K9, Shadow, he got separated." Her breath hitched, grief flashing in her eyes. "I couldn't go back. They ambushed us." Daniel's jaw clenched. Memories from years ago, shrapnel, sand, comrades screaming, surged like a wave he'd tried to outrun for decades. He forced himself to stay steady, focusing on her weakening pulse. He cleaned the cut on her forehead and checked her ribs. One, maybe two cracked. Her skin was turning pale. "Listen to me," Daniel said, voice firm despite his fear. "You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you." For the first time, her gaze steadied on him. "You know what it feels like?" she whispered. Yes, he did, and he wasn't losing her. Daniel had just finished checking Sergeant Amon's pulse when Ranger suddenly spun toward the window, teeth bared. A low growl vibrated through his entire body. Deep, warning, unmistakable. Daniel froze. Ranger only made that sound for one reason. Danger was closing in. A moment later, faint headlights appeared through the swirling snow, cutting across the fields in a slow, predatory crawl. No one traveled this far out during a storm. Unless they had a reason. He moved quickly, turning off the lights and pulling the curtains shut. The house plunged into darkness except for the faint glow of the stove. "Stay with me," he whispered to the Marine, who blinked weakly. Outside, car doors slammed. Footsteps crunched in the snow. More than one person, moving carefully, deliberately. Ranger positioned himself at the front door, head lowered, muscles tense like coiled steel. His growl deepened, vibrating through the floorboards. Daniel crouched beside him, peeking through a crack in the curtain. Dark figures circled the property, scanning the ground with flashlights, searching for something or someone. Sergeant Amon's voice trembled behind him. "It's them. They came back." Daniel's military instincts roared awake. He leaned close to Ranger. "Track them. Keep them back." Ranger slipped out through the kitchen door like a ghost, launching into the storm with a commanding bark. The shadows outside froze. Ranger's presence wasn't just loud, it was terrifying, and for the first time that night, the attackers hesitated. The storm raged for nearly an hour before the distant wail of sirens finally pierced the night. Daniel exhaled in relief just as Ranger reappeared at the porch, snow clinging to his fur, breath heavy but triumphant. The attackers were long gone, chased into the darkness by a dog who refused to let fear win. Paramedics rushed inside the moment they arrived. "Severe hypothermia," one of them muttered, checking Sergeant Amon's pulse. She wouldn't have survived much longer. They lifted her onto a stretcher, and Ranger followed closely, nudging her arm with a soft whine. Before the ambulance doors closed, she whispered, "Thank you, both of you." Her gaze lingered on Ranger. Hours later, Daniel sat in the hospital waiting room, Ranger curled at his feet. When the doctor finally approached, his expression was warm. "She's stable. Tough as steel, that Marine. She wanted to see you." Inside her room, Sergeant Amon smiled weakly. "They found Shadow," she said, tears brightening her eyes. "Your dog led the search team right to him. They said Ranger barked non-stop until they followed him." Daniel looked down at Ranger, pride swelling in his chest. "You saved 2 Marines tonight," she whispered. Ranger wagged his tail softly, as if he already knew.